Hey everyone, I've noticed that many of you are enjoying the videos, but most of you haven't subscribed yet. We're super close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, and your support could help us reach that milestone. If you're enjoying the content, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really makes a huge difference and helps us keep creating more awesome content. Thank you so much for watching and supporting. I push the mower across the lawn, the steady hum filling my ears, drowning out my thoughts. The smell of freshly cut grass rises into the morning air, clean and sharp. Everything looks fine, my yard, my house, my life, but there's this strange tension clinging to the edges of it all, like the air before a storm. I focus on keeping my lines straight, methodical, but there's a flicker in the back of my mind that won't go away. Something's wrong. I can't put my finger on it yet, but it's there, like an itch I can't quite scratch. The unease gnaws at me, small and relentless. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm just tired of routine. But I know better. This isn't about the lawn or work or some midlife crisis bullshit. It's Rachel. Lately, she's been different. Smiling less, her eyes distant, like she's somewhere else when we talk. And the conversations, they've become shorter, clipped, like I'm a chore she's checking off her list. We used to talk about everything, work, plans, stupid things that didn't matter. But now there's just silence. Empty, hollow space where connection used to be. I pause the mower and wipe the sweat from my forehead, staring at the house. She's in there, probably in the kitchen. I imagine her scrolling through her phone, that faint smile on her lips she wears these days, a smile that never reaches her eyes. It used to be for me. Now it feels like it's for someone else. She laughs, sure, but it's wrong, too sharp, like a knife wrapped in silk. Something's changed, but I can't say what. I watch her longer than I should sometimes. Like last night, sitting across from her at dinner, the two of us picking at our food in silence. She didn't even look up when her phone buzzed. Just flipped it over, face down, that practiced little motion that made my stomach twist. I asked her about it, casually, trying to keep my voice steady. Just a work thing, she said. Too quick, too dismissive. And then the smile, brittle, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. I shake off the thoughts, pushing the mower back toward the garage. I tell myself I'm being paranoid, that it's all in my head, but that creeping doubt sticks. Rachel's been pulling away slowly, like someone easing back from a ledge, careful not to draw attention to the fall. I close the garage door and step into the kitchen. She's there, just like I pictured, leaning against the counter with her phone in her hand, tapping away at something. She glances up when I enter, her smile polite, practiced. "How's the yard?" she asks, casual. "Fine." The word tastes bitter. "Looks good." Her eyes drop back to her phone, the conversation already over before it began. I watch her for a second longer, something twisting in my chest. That phone has become another barrier between us, a wall I can't see through. She's always on it, texting, calling, I don't know who. She used to leave it around, on the table, in her bag, but now it's always with her, glued to her like a lifeline. I stand there, staring, waiting for something, some crack in the veneer, but she just keeps tapping. "You're on that thing a lot these days," I say, my voice more casual than I feel. She looks up, a flicker of something passing across her face. Annoyance? Maybe. I can't tell anymore. "Just work stuff," she says again, but there's something else in her tone. Something practiced. I nod, not pushing it, but the feeling doesn't leave. It's like I'm standing on the edge of something, just a step away from realizing whatever it is she's hiding, but I don't take the step. Not yet. We sit down for dinner that night, and the silence is louder than the ticking of the clock on the wall. Rachel's phone sits beside her, buzzing occasionally, lighting up with a flash that she quickly ignores, flipping it over without a word. I feel it like a physical thing. The distance between us, the space that's been growing for weeks, maybe months. It's like we're in the same room, but miles apart. "Everything okay?" I ask, trying to sound casual, but the tension in my voice betrays me. She glances up, fork halfway to her mouth. "Yeah, why wouldn't it be?" Her answer feels too quick, too practiced, like she's been waiting for me to ask. The way her eyes dart away, the way she shifts in her chair, it's like she's trying to hide something. Or maybe she's just tired. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But that familiar knot tightens in my gut and I can't shake it. We finish the meal in silence, her on her phone again before the plates are cleared, texting someone, her face lighting up for a brief second with a smile that isn't meant for me. I watch her, trying to ignore the growing feeling in my chest, that gnawing sense that something's slipping away from me, something I can't quite catch hold of. I don't say anything more. There's no point. Later, after she goes to bed, I stay up in the living room, staring blankly at the TV, not really watching, just listening to the low hum of voices on the screen. My mind's a mess, turning over every little detail, every strange look, every unanswered text. It's like trying to piece together a puzzle without knowing what the picture's supposed to be. I tell myself it's nothing. I tell myself I'm being paranoid. But the doubt is there, lodged in my chest, refusing to let go. Rachel's already asleep when I finally crawl into bed, her back turned toward me, the same way it's been for weeks. I lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the silence between us. It's a chasm now, this gap that keeps growing wider with every passing day. I reach out, hesitating for a moment, my hand hovering over her shoulder, but I don't touch her. I let my hand fall back to the bed, the distance between us as tangible as the space in the sheets. She doesn't stir. The next morning, I sit at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, my eyes on the back of Rachel's head as she moves around the room getting ready for work. She's humming under her breath, the same old routine we've followed for years, but something feels off. The tension is still there, hanging heavy in the air, but she seems oblivious to it. Got a busy day? I ask, more out of habit than curiosity. She nods, not looking at me. Yeah, couple meetings, then dinner with a client. Dinner, again. Another night where she'll be late, where I'll be sitting here alone, wondering where she really is. I clench my jaw, forcing the thoughts back. I don't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband who sees ghosts where there aren't any. But something's changed. I can feel it. Anything you want to talk about? I ask, keeping my tone light, casual. Rachel glances at me, her eyes narrowing for just a second before she smiles, that same practiced, hollow smile. No, everything's fine. Why? Just asking. She shrugs, grabbing her bag and phone. I'll see you later. And just like that, she's gone, the front door clicking shut behind her. I sit there, staring at my coffee, the silence of the house pressing in around me. I try to tell myself it's nothing, that I'm reading too much into things. But the doubt is there, stronger than ever, and it's not going away. I go through the motions of my day, but my mind keeps drifting back to Rachel, her smile, her phone, the way she's pulling away. It's like watching a movie in slow motion, seeing the cracks form but being powerless to stop them from spreading. By the time evening rolls around, I'm exhausted. Not from work, but from thinking, from second-guessing every little thing. Rachel's late again, just like she said she would be. I sit on the couch, waiting for the sound of the front door, my stomach tight with a mix of anger and something else I can't quite name. She comes home around 9, looking tired, but not in the way you do after a long day at work. It's a different kind of exhaustion, like she's been living two lives, and the weight of it is starting to show. Long day? I ask, my voice too casual, too light. Rachel nods, dropping her bag by the door. Yeah, I'm beat. I watch her closely, looking for something, anything that might give me a clue. But she's good, too good. She doesn't slip, doesn't stumble. She's been playing this game longer than I've realized. We go through the motions again, the same empty conversation, the same polite smiles. But the tension is there, thick and heavy, and I can feel it pressing down on me, squeezing tighter with every passing moment. By the time we go to bed, I'm wound so tight I can barely breathe. I lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of Rachel's breathing beside me. She's asleep, or at least pretending to be. I don't touch her. I don't say a word. But the doubt is there, growing. The changes started slowly, but now they're all I can see. Rachel's been working late more often, her usual excuses neatly wrapped in corporate jargon, meetings, deadlines, client dinners. It's always something. I tell myself it's just a busy season, that her company's demands are more intense than usual, but deep down, I know it's a lie. It's not the extra hours that bother me. It's what's coming home with her when she finally walks through the door. The scent hit me first, faint but different. A sharp cologne that isn't mine, mingling with her perfume, clinging to her skin. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was a colleague's, maybe they hugged. Maybe I'm being paranoid again. But the next time, it's stronger. And her clothes, there's something off about them too. Too neat, too crisp. Like she's gone to great lengths to smooth out every wrinkle, every crease, hiding any sign of what or who she's been doing. I tell myself to let it go, but I can't. My mind circles back to the cologne every time she's late, every time she steps out of the car and into the house, avoiding my gaze. The weight of it sits in my chest like a stone, pressing down harder with each night that passes. I try to confront her once, throwing out a casual, "Who are you meeting tonight?" She barely looks up from her phone, brushing me off with a laugh that doesn't reach her eyes. "Don't be paranoid, David. It's just work." I wish I could believe her. But the laughter that follows, sharp and dismissive, doesn't ease the tension. It makes it worse. She's laughing at me, not with me. And that knot in my stomach tightens, pulling at everything that used to feel solid. It's the little things too. Her phone, always in her hand now, never left on the counter like it used to be. She's become protective of it. Over dinner, her eyes flicker toward it with a kind of urgency she can't quite hide. Every buzz or notification sends a small jolt through her, but she doesn't answer them anymore. Not in front of me. Instead, she flips the phone over, face down, as if the action alone will erase whatever's happening on the screen. I start watching her more closely. Subtle, but deliberate. I don't ask questions outright anymore. What's the point? The answers won't be real. Instead, I look for patterns, for cracks in her carefully constructed facade. It's in the way she brushes her hair over her shoulder, avoiding eye contact, the way her voice tightens when I ask about her day, or the slight hesitation before she answers. She's careful, but I'm learning to see through the spaces between her words. And then there are the nights she doesn't come home at all. She calls, of course. There's always a reason, an emergency meeting that ran too long, a last-minute request from a client, something that sounds professional enough to be believable. But every time she gives me her excuse, the pit in my stomach grows deeper. Something's changed between us, something I can't name, but it's real. It's there, stretching the distance between us wider every day. One night, she walks in around midnight, her face flushed in a way that has nothing to do with work. The smell of that same cologne drifts off her, stronger this time, unmistakable. I don't say anything, just watch her move across the room, her steps hurried and stiff. She doesn't kiss me hello, doesn't even pause to meet my eyes. Just a quick mumble about being tired, then she's gone, disappearing into the shower. I wait. The water runs longer than usual, the steam filling the space between us, thick and suffocating. My fingers drum against the side of the couch, the weight of my thoughts pressing down on me. It's not paranoia. Not anymore. The next day, I work from home, something I haven't done in a while. She doesn't seem to care. Barely registers my presence as she gets ready, moving through the motions with a kind of mechanical precision. Her goodbye is quick, cold, and I'm left sitting in the silence of the house, my mind spiraling with the possibilities. That afternoon, I decide to surprise her. Pick up her car from the repair shop so she doesn't have to. It's a small gesture, something to remind her that I'm still here, still paying attention. I drive over, and when I open the door to check the interior, there it is, a receipt neatly tucked into the side pocket of the passenger seat. I almost miss it, but the corner sticks out just enough to catch my eye. A restaurant I don't recognize, a place we've never been together. The date on the receipt is from last night, dinner for two. My hand trembles as I pull the receipt closer, my eyes scanning the details, trying to make sense of it. It doesn't add up. The total, the time, it all points to something I already know but haven't wanted to admit, and then I turn it over. Scrawled on the back in hurried handwriting, "Next time, My place. M. I feel the blood drain from my face, my stomach twisting into a knot so tight it's hard to breathe. My hands shake as I stare at the words, the ink smudged slightly, but still clear enough to make out. M. Who the hell is M? It doesn't matter. Everything I've been pushing down, all the doubts and suspicions, rushes to the surface, overwhelming me in a wave of cold, hard clarity. Rachel is cheating. Not just emotionally distant, not just pulling away. She's seeing someone else, sleeping with someone else. And I didn't see it until now. Until this moment, when the evidence is staring me in the face, undeniable. I sit there for what feels like hours, the receipt clutched in my hand, my mind racing in 1,000 directions. I don't know what to do, what to think. The shock freezes me in place, my breath shallow, my pulse pounding in my ears. But slowly, something changes. The cold shock starts to burn, turning into something else, something harder, sharper, anger. She thinks I'm blind. That I haven't noticed the lies, the late nights, the little details she's tried so hard to hide. She thinks I'll keep believing her excuses, that I'll just sit back and let this happen. But she's wrong. So wrong. I drop the receipt onto the seat and slam the car door shut, the sound echoing in the empty lot. My chest is tight with a kind of controlled rage I haven't felt in years. It's not the explosive, irrational kind of anger that leads to shouting or slamming doors. No, this is different. It's cold. Methodical. Rachel doesn't know it yet, but I'm done being the oblivious husband. I'm done being the guy who doesn't ask questions, who ignores the signs. I'm done playing by the rules she set up to keep me in the dark. She's not going to get away with this. I drive home slowly, my thoughts clicking into place with a clarity that surprises me. I could confront her now, throw the receipt in her face, demand answers, scream, accuse. But that's not enough. It's too easy, too predictable. I've played the good husband for too long to throw everything away on a single moment of rage. No, if she wants to tear apart everything we've built, then she's going to feel every single brick as it crumbles around her, slowly, painfully. By the time I pull into the driveway, the plan is already forming in my mind. It won't be fast, it won't be simple, but it will be devastating. She won't even see it coming. Rachel's going to learn what it feels like to have everything slip through her fingers, just like I have these past few months. I leave the receipt in the car, hidden where she won't find it, and walk into the house. The quiet greets me, the stillness of a home that no longer feels like mine. I stand in the living room, staring at the walls, the furniture, the life we built together. The life she's been so willing to throw away. But I'm not going to throw it away. I'm going to take it all back, piece by piece. And when she finally realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. Rachel won't know what hit her. I sit down on the couch, the cold weight of the plan settling in my chest. It feels good. For the first time in weeks, I'm not drowning in doubt, not suffocated by uncertainty. I know what I need to do, and I'm going to do it. I wait for her to come home that night, the anger no longer boiling, but simmering just beneath the surface, controlled. She walks in, another late night, another excuse, the scent of that damn cologne still clinging to her. I don't react. I don't flinch. I play my part, just like I always have, polite, distant, the perfect husband. But inside, I'm already planning her downfall. The receipt is still in the car. It's not going anywhere, just like me. I'm not going anywhere. When she finally goes to bed, I stay up, staring at the darkened hallway where she disappeared. I think about the note, the handwriting, the smell, and I think about how this all ends. Not with her in control. I'll make sure of that. I started slow, gathering evidence piece by piece, like collecting ammunition before a war. Every lie, every betrayal was documented and filed away, a record of her deception that I could wield later. I checked her phone records when she was in the shower, scrolling through the unfamiliar numbers that repeated themselves like a pattern I couldn't unsee. Marked the times, the texts that came in late at night. She never left her phone unattended, but I didn't need to crack it wide open. Patterns tell their own story. Rachel became careless, more brazen in her cheating, as if she'd convinced herself I was too dumb, too blind to notice. Her smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes, was now just a mask, and I could feel the poison behind it. She acted like nothing had changed, except everything had. Every night she came home late, she would shower immediately, the scent of her lover's cologne clinging to her even through the steam. I said nothing. I played my part, the perfect, oblivious husband. I made dinner, asked about her day, and kissed her cheek like a man unaware that everything he loves has already rotted away from the inside. But inside, I was simmering, slowly letting the anger ferment into something sharper, more dangerous. It wasn't enough just to know she was cheating. I had to do more than just watch it happen. That's when I started checking her emails, digging through social media when I knew she was asleep or distracted. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for: confirmation of her affair in messages, in the smug, flirty exchanges with her lover, M. I still didn't know who he was, but that was going to change. Every interaction with Rachel felt like drinking poison now. Every time she leaned in for a kiss, every forced "I love you" was laced with lies. It burned, knowing she was using me as a placeholder, keeping me on the hook while she played house with someone else. She thought she had me wrapped around her finger, still the clueless husband who wouldn't ask too many questions. But she had no idea. One night, while Rachel was passed out in the bedroom after another late work dinner, I made my move. I copied everything I could: phone numbers, emails, texts, everything that pointed to her affair. I stored it away, keeping it safe like a loaded gun I wasn't ready to fire yet. I wasn't going to just confront her. That was too simple, too immediate. No, I wanted her life to unravel the way mine had been slowly coming apart, piece by piece. I reached out to a lawyer, but I didn't tell her it was about the affair. I played the role of the concerned husband, interested in estate planning, just making sure our future was secure. What Rachel didn't know was that I was setting the groundwork for a divorce that would leave her with nothing. I wanted her blindsided, hit hard by the reality of what she'd done. I kept my distance emotionally, which wasn't hard. Every time she touched me, it felt like an insult. I let her continue with her facade, let her believe that everything was fine between us. The resentment growing inside me was like a slow, steady burn, but I wasn't in a rush. I wanted to do this right. I wanted to hurt her the way she'd hurt me, but it had to be calculated, deliberate. Then she threw me off. One night, out of nowhere, she suggested we go to couples counseling. It caught me off guard. For a moment, I wondered if she knew, if she had caught on to my plan, but her face betrayed nothing but guilt. Was she trying to make up for something? Was this her way of absolving herself from the weight of her affair? I couldn't say no without raising suspicion, so I agreed. It complicated things. I didn't want to sit in some therapist's office and talk about our problems, when the problem was her infidelity, her betrayal. But I went along with it, playing my part, letting her think she still had control of the situation. If she thought she could fix things with a few therapy sessions, she was more delusional than I'd realized. But I didn't mind. I'd let her believe she was in control while I continued gathering my evidence, preparing for the final blow. The first session was awkward, filled with the usual small talk and surface-level complaints. Rachel sat there talking about how disconnected she felt, how we'd drifted apart. I kept my mouth shut, nodding when appropriate, pretending to care. The counselor asked me how I felt, and I lied through my teeth, saying I wanted to work on things, that I wanted to rebuild what we'd lost. I had no intention of rebuilding anything. Then, during our second session, the truth slipped out. Rachel was talking about her stress at work, how she'd been feeling overwhelmed when she mentioned someone, a name, Mark. I didn't react immediately, but inside something clicked. I knew that name, Mark. He was a client, someone I'd met a few times in professional settings, but it never crossed my mind that he could be the one, the lover. As she kept talking, I pieced it together. The late nights, the missed dinners, the work meetings, it had all been with him. Mark, the man I'd shared drinks with at a corporate event not too long ago. The man I thought was just another acquaintance in my professional circle. The betrayal dug deeper now, not just infidelity, but personal, intimate. Rachel had cheated with someone we both knew. Someone I'd shaken hands with, someone who smiled in my face while he slept with my wife behind my back. The revelation made everything sharper, more painful, but it also made my revenge clearer. This wasn't just about Rachel anymore. Mark was part of this too, and he was going to pay. I didn't let Rachel see my reaction, didn't let her know that her little slip-up had just sealed both of their fates. I played along, nodding through the rest of the session, pretending that we were making progress, but my mind was already racing, planning the next steps. Mark had made it personal, and now he was going to be collateral damage. I couldn't just destroy Rachel's life without dragging him down with her. They were both guilty, and they both deserved to feel the weight of what they'd done. The betrayal was deeper than I'd thought, and my revenge would need to be just as profound. Back at home, I became colder, more distant. Rachel didn't seem to notice. If anything, she seemed relieved that we were working on things, but that was part of the plan. Let her think she was fixing the cracks in our marriage, while I quietly dug the foundation out from under her. At night, after she fell asleep, I stayed awake, running through every detail of my plan. I'd already laid the groundwork with the lawyer, setting up the divorce to hit her when she least expected it. But now I needed more. I needed Mark's downfall as well. I couldn't just go after Rachel anymore. This needed to be bigger, more destructive. I started looking into Mark. His social media, his public records, anything that could give me leverage. I found enough to begin unraveling him too. Some minor discrepancies in his business dealings, questionable expenses, nothing too damning yet, but enough to point me in the right direction. I'd start small, leak information that could damage his reputation, make him vulnerable. I'd let it fester, let it grow until his entire career came crashing down around him. Rachel didn't notice a thing. She kept smiling, thinking we were reconnecting, oblivious to the trap I was setting for her. I let her have her therapy sessions, her late-night meetings, her lies. It was all part of the long game. She thought she was rebuilding her life, but she was just digging her own grave. And Mark, he had no idea what was coming for him. I wasn't in a hurry. I didn't need to be. The pieces were all falling into place, and soon enough, they'd both realize just how badly they'd miscalculated. Rachel had destroyed our marriage with her lies, with her affair, and now she was going to lose everything. Mark had inserted himself into my life, taken what wasn't his, and now he was going to pay the price. As I sat there watching Rachel laugh at something on her phone, pretending everything was normal, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. She was still so unaware, still so sure that she had me fooled. But I was done playing her game. Now, it was my turn. Mark would fall first, then Rachel. And when they finally realized what had happened, it would be too late to stop any of it. They'd be left in the ruins of their own making, wondering how everything had slipped away. I couldn't wait to watch it all burn. The plan unfolded like clockwork, each move precise, deliberate. I took my time, sowing chaos in Mark's life before Rachel ever realized what was happening. It began with a subtle strike, an anonymous email to Mark's employer flagging irregularities in his expense reports. I knew enough to make it believable, but not enough to seem personal, just the right amount of doubt to plant a seed. Mark was a rising star in his company, and I knew how fragile reputations were at that level. One little whisper could lead to a full-scale investigation, and once the wolves were sniffing, it wouldn't be long before they found something damning. I didn't stop there. Every day, I chipped away at him. An anonymous call here, a tip-off to his competitors there. Nothing too dramatic, just enough to create friction, tension. I fed into his insecurities, making sure he started slipping up at work, missing deadlines, overlooking details. It was subtle at first, but it began to build. The cracks in his polished exterior started to show, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the pressure broke him. Mark's downfall wouldn't be fast, but it would be inevitable. Meanwhile, I continued playing the supportive husband at home, manipulating Rachel's schedule, her life. She had no idea what was happening. I misplaced critical documents she needed for work, forgot to relay important messages, and subtly sabotaged her meetings. Her frustration grew, but she couldn't pinpoint why everything was suddenly going wrong. The more she tried to regain control, the more things seemed to spiral. Then I went further. It was time to deliver the final blow, the one that would send Rachel spiraling into the same abyss she'd unknowingly shoved me into. One day when she was at work, I put my plan into motion. It started with a small package delivered to her office. Inside, a USB drive. I'd compiled everything, screenshots of her texts with Mark, photos from their clandestine meetups, the emails, the receipt I found in her car. I made sure it was anonymous, sent from a fake name so she would have no clue who was behind it. The note inside was simple. How was the taste of the judge's sausage? I knew Rachel would understand immediately. It was their private little joke, a sickening one I'd seen in their texts. Rachel had complained about how formal and stiff I was in bed, comparing me to a judge she'd seen on TV once, someone she found repulsive. The phrase was hers. She'd said it to Mark in one of their late-night chats, probably while lying next to me in bed. That one phrase told me everything. How she saw me, how she laughed at me with him. Now it was going to be her undoing. I imagined her opening the package, seeing the photos, the texts, realizing her secret life was out in the open. I pictured the look on her face as she read the note, the panic, the horror, the understanding that her perfect little affair wasn't so secret anymore. But that wasn't the climax. It wasn't enough to send her reeling. The real twist was yet to come, the moment I'd been waiting for. That evening she came home later than usual. Her face was pale, drained of color, and I could tell something was off. She barely acknowledged me when she walked in, her movements stiff, robotic. I watched her from the kitchen as she poured herself a glass of wine with trembling hands. The package had done its job. "Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She glanced at me, her eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. "Yeah, just a long day." She was lying. I could feel the fear radiating off her, the desperation bubbling beneath the surface. I said nothing more, just watched as she downed the glass of wine in a few gulps and poured another. That's when the doorbell rang. Rachel froze, her hand gripping the glass so tight I thought it might shatter. I didn't move, just stood there waiting. "You gonna get that?" I asked casually. She swallowed hard, her throat working up and down, and finally nodded. Slowly, she made her way to the front door, her footsteps heavy. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her breath quickened as she turned the handle and opened the door. A delivery man stood there, holding a large brown box. His face was blank, indifferent, just another guy doing his job. "Package for Rachel," he said. She took it, her hands shaking as she signed for it. The box was bigger than expected, unmarked except for a small, printed label. As soon as she closed the door, her eyes flicked to the label, and I watched the blood drain from her face entirely. The label read, "How was the taste of the judge's sausage?" Rachel let out a small, strangled sound, almost a whimper. She backed away from the door, clutching the box like it was a bomb. I stood up from the kitchen counter, leaning against the door frame as I watched her, calm and collected. "What's in the box?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My heart beat slowly, deliberately. I was in control. She wasn't. Rachel didn't answer. She stumbled into the living room, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps, and placed the box on the coffee table. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at it, her hand hovering over the lid as if opening it would confirm all her worst fears. "Rachel," I said softly, "open it." Her eyes darted to mine, wide with terror. But she obeyed. Her fingers fumbled with the tape, peeling it back slowly, almost mechanically. When the lid finally came off, her whole body went rigid. Inside, arranged neatly, were the photos. Dozens of them. Rachel and Mark. Together. Kissing in the parking lot of some hotel, holding hands at a restaurant, entering his apartment. Every moment they thought they'd kept hidden, documented and placed in front of her like evidence at a trial. And there was more. At the bottom of the box, beneath the photos, was something that made her let out a sharp, guttural scream. A judge's gavel. A small, wooden gavel, polished and gleaming, sitting there as if to mock her. She stumbled back, tripping over the coffee table, her hands flying to her mouth as she choked back sobs. I stayed where I was, arms folded across my chest, watching her unravel, the satisfaction washing over me like a cold breeze. She was terrified now. She didn't know where the photos had come from, didn't know who was behind the package, but she knew what it meant. Her life was about to fall apart. Who, who sent this? She gasped, tears streaming down her face. Who knows? I shrugged. Does it matter? She collapsed onto the couch, shaking, her eyes wild as she looked at me. David, David, you have to help me. You don't understand. If Mark's wife sees this, if anyone sees this, my job, everything, please. Her voice cracked with desperation, and for a brief moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered, the nights I lay awake, wondering where she was, the lies, the laughter she shared with Mark at my expense. No, she didn't deserve pity. Help you? I asked, my voice cold, detached. Why would I do that? Rachel froze. Her mouth opened and closed as if she couldn't comprehend what I was saying. The realization dawned on her slowly, painfully. You, she whispered. It was you. I didn't deny it. I didn't need to. The truth was already there, laid bare in front of her, as undeniable as the photos in that box. Her face crumpled, and she let out a sob that sounded like it came from somewhere deep, somewhere raw. She reached for me, but I stepped back, disgust twisting in my gut. I trusted you, she wailed. David, please, we can fix this. I'll end it with Mark. I swear, it's over. It was a mistake. I love you. I do. Shut up, I snapped, cutting her off. The words felt like venom on my tongue. You don't love me, Rachel. You never did. She collapsed onto the floor weeping, her shoulders shaking with the force of her sobs. But I didn't care. I didn't feel sorry for her. She was finally feeling what I had felt for months, powerless, broken, trapped in a life that had been ripped out from under her. Please, she begged, her voice hoarse, don't ruin me. But I already had. I stood there for a moment longer, watching her cry, and then I turned away, leaving her to drown in the wreckage of her own making. There was still more to come. Rachel's life collapsed in the days that followed. It started with whispers at her office, rumors about her professionalism, her commitment, her ethics. The photos I'd leaked found their way to her superiors. At first, it was just raised eyebrows, silent judgments passed in corners. But it didn't take long for the whispers to turn into something more dangerous. Emails arrived from the company's HR department, polite but stern, requesting a meeting to discuss her conduct. She tried to spin it, of course, claimed the photos were doctored or taken out of context, but the evidence was too damning, too overwhelming. She wasn't just fighting for her job now, she was fighting for her reputation, for her livelihood, and it was a battle she was losing. Mark wasn't faring any better. I timed everything perfectly, striking at his weakest moments. His company was conducting a full audit, and whispers of inappropriate conduct were starting to bubble up. I'd made sure his professional reputation was hanging by a thread. His career was unraveling faster than he could control, and the fallout was spreading like wildfire. Rachel's affair was no longer just a personal matter. It had gone public. Mark's wife found out, and the news devastated her. She wasted no time filing for divorce, which sent Mark scrambling to hold on to the last shreds of his personal life. I heard through the grapevine that Mark had been caught in a screaming match with his soon-to-be ex-wife outside their home, his life crumbling just as I'd planned. I watched from the sidelines, calm and detached, as the chaos unfolded. Neither of them could trace it back to me. I was invisible, just a ghost pulling strings in the background. And they were drowning in the mess they had created, the life they thought they could live without consequence. I had dismantled their world, piece by piece, exactly as I'd intended. Rachel was the first to confront me. It happened late one evening, after another brutal day of accusations and phone calls. She was shaking when she came home, her eyes red from crying, her hands clutching at the strap of her purse like it was the only thing grounding her to reality. She didn't even look at me when she walked through the door, her footsteps heavy as if each step took every ounce of strength she had left. I was waiting in the living room, calm and patient, the television humming softly in the background. She dropped her purse on the floor, her body trembling as she turned to face me. "You did this," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "All of this, it's because of you. I looked up from the screen, my expression unreadable. What are you talking about? Her breath hitched and she stumbled forward, collapsing onto the couch beside me. The photos, the package, the rumors at work, Mark's career, everything's falling apart. I know it's you, David. It has to be. I didn't respond immediately. I just watched her, studied the way her face twisted with desperation, her eyes wide with panic. She was barely holding it together. You think I'm responsible for that? I asked coolly. Rachel's voice cracked. Don't lie to me. Don't you dare. I know you hate me. I know you want to ruin me for what I did, but please. David, I'm begging you. Don't destroy me. I'll lose everything. My job, my reputation, my life. Her words were sharp, pleading, and there was a time once when they might have broken me, when I might have caved. But not anymore. Everything you lost, you did to yourself, I said, my voice steady and cold. You think this is my fault? You're the one who lied. You're the one who cheated. You made the choice to wreck our marriage. Now you're just dealing with the consequences. Rachel's face twisted in pain, her tears falling freely now. I'm sorry, she whispered. I made a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you like this. Please, David, just stop. I'll do anything. You'll what? I cut her off, leaning forward. End it with Mark? You already lost him. Fix our marriage? It's beyond repair. You betrayed me, Rachel. You destroyed everything. And now you want me to feel sorry for you? You're pathetic. Her sobs turned violent, her body shaking with the weight of it all. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders heaving as she broke down in front of me. But it didn't move me. There was no satisfaction in seeing her like this, no joy in watching her suffer, just an emptiness. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, the moment when she would crumble, the moment when I would finally feel vindicated, powerful. But the satisfaction I'd been craving never came. I stood up, leaving her on the couch, a weeping mess. She called after me, her voice cracking with desperation, but I didn't look back. I went upstairs, closed the door behind me, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. I'd gotten everything I wanted. Rachel was ruined. Mark was ruined. I'd played my hand perfectly, orchestrating their downfall without leaving a trace. But instead of feeling victorious, I felt nothing. Downstairs, I could still hear Rachel's sobs, muffled through the walls, the sound a constant reminder of what I'd done, what we had both done. The next day, Rachel didn't go to work. She stayed in the house, locked in our bedroom, barely speaking, barely moving. I didn't check on her. I didn't care what she did anymore. She'd become a ghost in our own home, just like I'd been for all those months while she lived her double life. Word must have spread, though, because by the end of the week, she received the official notice. She'd been fired. They didn't even give her a chance to explain, to defend herself. The scandal was too big, the damage too deep. Her career was over. She had nothing left. She confronted me again that evening, but this time she was hollow. The fight in her was gone, her spirit shattered. She stood in the kitchen, leaning against the counter as if she could barely support herself. I have nothing now, she whispered, her voice flat. It's all gone. My job, my reputation. Mark's divorcing his wife, and you've destroyed everything. I turned to face her, arms crossed. You did this to yourself, Rachel. She didn't respond. She just stared at me, her eyes empty, like she was looking at a stranger. Maybe she was. Maybe I wasn't the same man anymore. You wanted me gone for good, didn't you? She asked, her voice barely audible. You wanted to erase me from your life. Well, you've done it. Congratulations. The words cut deeper than I expected. I had wanted her gone. I had wanted revenge, to make her pay for what she'd done to me. And now that I'd succeeded, I couldn't even look at her without feeling sick. She left that night, packed a small bag and walked out of the door without another word. I didn't stop her, didn't ask where she was going. I just watched her go, the weight of what I'd done settling in the silence she left behind. Days passed, and Rachel didn't come back. I heard through mutual friends that she was staying at a cheap motel, too ashamed to go anywhere else. She was a pariah in her professional circle, untouchable. Mark's life was still unraveling too, his reputation destroyed, his marriage in ruins. He'd gone underground, trying to salvage what little he had left. I had won. I'd destroyed them both. But the victory felt hollow. The house felt emptier now, colder. Rachel's absence, once something I'd craved, now left a void I hadn't anticipated. I wandered the rooms at night, the silence stretching out like a suffocating blanket. I thought revenge would fill the emptiness, that it would give me closure, satisfaction. But all it had done was amplify the hollowness inside me. One evening, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the reflection of a man I barely recognized. I'd gotten everything I wanted, but at what cost? I'd torn down Rachel's life, but in doing so, I'd torn down my own. There was nothing left. No marriage, no love, just bitterness in an empty house. I thought about calling her, about apologizing, but the words wouldn't come. What was there to say? I'd gone too far. We were both broken now, victims of the mess we'd made. The truth was, I hadn't just destroyed her. I destroyed myself. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, the sunlight filtering through the blinds, casting long shadows across the floor. I stared at the cup of coffee in front of me. Oh, was it? I saw in front of me, cold and untouched, my thoughts spinning in circles. I had no future, no path forward. I'd let my anger, my thirst for revenge consume me, and now there was nothing left. In the end, we were both just collateral damage. The victory I thought I wanted had left me with nothing but silence. The days blurred together in a haze of isolation. I moved through the house like a ghost, going through the motions but never feeling alive. The house was silent now, just the sound of my own footsteps echoing off the walls. I'd always thought the silence would be comforting, peaceful even, but it wasn't. It was oppressive, empty. I'd won, hadn't I? I kept telling myself that. I had succeeded in every step of my plan. Rachel was gone, her life in ruins, her career obliterated. Mark was a footnote in his own downfall, too busy scrambling to pick up the pieces of his shattered existence. The world had crumbled around them both, just as I'd orchestrated. There was no one left to hurt me now, but that victory, the one I'd been so sure would fill the void, felt like a distant memory. It hadn't brought me the closure I thought it would. Instead, it had left me hollow, like I had amputated a part of myself in the process. The anger, the resentment, the burning need for revenge had been all that fueled me for so long, and now that it was gone, I had nothing left. No purpose, no life. Just a shell of the man I used to be. I spent my days replaying it all in my head, every step, every move I'd made, as if searching for the point where I went too far. Was it the photos? The package? Maybe it was earlier when I'd first started gathering evidence, plotting her demise instead of confronting her. Or maybe it was before that, when I'd let the doubt fester, building walls between us instead of facing the truth head on. I couldn't find the answer. I wasn't sure there was one. One evening, I found myself sitting in the dark, the living room illuminated only by the faint light spilling in from the street outside. I stared at the empty space where Rachel used to sit, remembering the nights we'd spent there together, before all of this, before Mark, before the lies. I couldn't remember the last time we'd been happy, when we'd actually been us. Had we ever been happy? Or had I been living in a delusion, convincing myself that our life was perfect when it had been rotting from the inside all along? The questions gnawed at me, but I had no answers. There was no one left to ask. I stood up, feeling the weight of the silence pressing down on me, suffocating. I couldn't stay in the house anymore. It was a mausoleum now, a tomb of broken memories and shattered trust. Grabbing my jacket, I left without a destination in mind, stepping out into the cold night air. The streets were quiet, the world around me still, but it was different from the silence of the house. This quiet felt alive, like the world was still moving, even if I wasn't part of it anymore. I wandered aimlessly, my feet carrying me through the neighborhood I'd once considered my safe haven. The houses, the perfectly manicured lawns, the street lights glowing softly, it all felt so distant, like I didn't belong there anymore, like I was an outsider looking in. I ended up at a park, sitting on a bench under the dim light of a lamppost. The cold air bit at my skin, but I didn't feel it. My mind was too tangled in itself, too lost in the whirlwind of everything that had happened. I'd spent so long focusing on Rachel and Mark, on tearing their lives apart, that I hadn't stopped to think about what came after. The aftermath, the silence, the nothingness. I hadn't prepared for this. I didn't know how to live with it. I closed my eyes, leaning back against the bench, feeling the rough wood press into my spine. My mind kept drifting back to Rachel. Where was she now? What was she doing? Did she hate me? I knew she did. How could she not? But the worst part wasn't her hatred. It was that, deep down, I wasn't sure I hated her anymore. That realization twisted inside me like a knife. After everything she'd done, everything I'd learned, a part of me still couldn't let her go. Despite the betrayal, despite the lies, there was a version of Rachel that I had loved. And that version, the one I'd clung to in my mind, was gone. Gone long before the affair, long before everything fell apart. I'd been so blinded by my need for revenge, for control, that I hadn't allowed myself to grieve. I hadn't mourned the loss of us. And now it was too late. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves around me, but I didn't move. I just sat there, staring into the darkness, trying to make sense of the mess I'd made. I didn't regret it, not exactly. But I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd imagined either. I thought revenge would free me. Instead, it had trapped me in a different kind of prison, a prison of my own making. I thought back to the moment Rachel walked out of the house, the sound of the door closing behind her, the finality of it. That was when I truly lost her, not when I found the note in her car. Not when I first pieced together her affair with Mark. No, I lost her the moment I chose revenge over reconciliation, the moment I decided to destroy rather than rebuild. I didn't know if I could have saved us, even if I had tried. Maybe we were doomed from the start, two people living in a lie, pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. But I'd never given us a chance to find out, and now I never would. The streets were empty when I finally stood up from the bench, my legs stiff from the cold. I made my way back home, the path familiar yet foreign, like I was walking through a life that no longer belonged to me. When I reached the front door, I hesitated. For a moment, I considered turning around, walking away from it all. Leaving the house, leaving the memories, leaving the emptiness behind. But where would I go? I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. The house was still, just as I'd left it. I walked through the living room, past the remnants of a life I'd once cherished. The picture frames on the wall, the books we'd collected together, the small knickknacks that had seemed so important at the time, they were all meaningless now, relics of a life I no longer recognized. I ended up in the bedroom, standing at the foot of the bed we'd shared. The bed where she'd lied to me, where she'd whispered words of love even as she betrayed me. I should have hated that bed, hated the memories attached to it. But instead, all I felt was a profound sense of loss. Loss for the life we could have had. Loss for the man I used to be. I sat down on the edge of the bed, running my hand over the smooth fabric of the comforter. The silence was deafening now, louder than it had ever been. I'd wanted this silence, craved it, but now I realized it wasn't silence I needed. It was peace. And peace was something I didn't know how to find anymore. I thought about Rachel again, what she might be doing right now. If she was still in that cheap motel, hiding from the world, if she had found a way to start over, or if she was just as lost as I was. I wanted to call her, to hear her voice, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. Too much had been said, too much had been done. There was no going back. I lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling, letting the silence wash over me. For the first time in months, I let myself feel the weight of everything. The betrayal, the anger, the sadness, the loneliness. I'd been running from it for so long, hiding behind my need for revenge, but now there was nothing left to hide behind. The house felt colder than ever, like the warmth had been sucked out of it the moment Rachel left. And maybe that was true. Maybe the warmth had never really been there to begin with. Or maybe it had, and I destroyed it in my pursuit of retribution. I closed my eyes, letting the darkness take over, sinking into the void I'd created. There was no future here, no hope, just an endless cycle of regret and what-ifs. I'd wanted revenge to free me, but all it had done was leave me trapped in a prison of my own making. I lay there feeling the emptiness seep into my bones, knowing that this was my life now. There was no escape from it, no going back, just me, alone, in the silence I'd fought so hard to achieve. But this wasn't silence, it was nothing, and it was all I had left.